There is a huge craze in the personal development world regarding about being positive and being happy all the time. But in reality, the real truth is a lot of the times being positive can actually have a very detrimental effect to you going off and doing something great on planet Earth and accomplishing your trading goals. Or playing big, starting a business, becoming a trader, entrepreneur, becoming a great athlete, whatever it is that you're doing, trying to attempt, having solely positive outlook can sometimes be a huge detrimental effect. Positive thinking is only half of the equation. It's a half truth. Masses are able to stomach enough to hear it, but it's not where the masses of this world are playing, because there is a whole other side to it. There's actually a power to negative thinking. So we're going to draw a diagram that represents the human mind. So up at the top, we have sire mind. Think of this as soul, your spiritual realm, your thinking brain. Your down at the bottom, we got lower animal mind. So these are your emotions, your senses, your physical realm. So that's basically everything that you can see, touch, hear, and smell, right? So up to the top, the diagram, think of this as light, and down at the bottom, think of this as matter. So physical objects. Now in physics, we know that if you're a photon, you're a particle of light. You got no time, no space, no charge, and no mass. But down in the physical realm, things are a lot different. So when you get two photons, two particles of light, smash them together, they then split, then create an electron and a positron from that particle of light, and then they gain mass. So down here in the physical realm, you got mass, you got charge, you got space, you got time. In science, we know that ion is a charged particle. Psychology, we know that emotional perception of something say that they are emotionally charged about it, right? So down here in the physical realm, whenever you swear away from balance and neutrality, you're spelling a feeling of annihilation. But Newton's third law tells us that for every action in the universe, there's an equal reaction. So that means that more elation that you feel, the more depression that you will inevitably feel afterwards when you eventually realize the negative of your situation that you were initially applied to before. So before, maybe when you were initially elated because you were only seeing the positives of an event or a situation or maybe another person, then eventually start to become conscious and aware of the actual negatives, risks, and drawbacks to that event or situation or person. And now you're feeling negatively charged. Why? So like all the way back to the other way. We went from elation and swung to depression. So elation and depression, they'll always be balanced and conservative. The psyche that goes for every single polarizing emotion: pleasure and pain, greed and fear, skepticism and naivety. And so often people spend their entire lives oscillating between these two poles. Depressed, I'm elated. I'm depressed, I'm elated. I'm depressed, I'm elated. But they're literally yo-yos to swinging back and forth. And I'm sure we all come across someone in our lives that was just so emotionally charged and volatile like that. But down here is where the masses are. They live their entire lives oscillating between from one polarity to the next, back and forth, back and forth. They're constantly polarized and manipulated by governments and the media and these other people in general. Now, to master your life, to master your trading, it's to pull out of these emotional oscillations. So the reason I'm trying to draw a diagram like this is because it's a pendulum. You want to think of a pendulum by swinging back and forth, right? So down here, the lower mind, the animal mind, it oscillates back and forth, right? Get a big swing. So down here, your lower mind oscillates according to the laws of polarity, rhythm, and vibration. But then as you move up and you start using your higher mind, the length of the pendulum becomes smaller and smaller, and the vibration becomes faster and faster. You're literally vibrating at a higher frequency. So higher vibration is up to the top, and the lower vibration is down at the bottom. So means that evolution is towards the light. That is where the masses play, because they see both sides of the coin to every single situation in life. They see both the positive and the negatives. They're losing 90, 70, 90% of the traders. They're the masses down here at the bottom. The masses are constantly trying to seek only pleasures and completely avoid pains. They try to stick only to the one side, chasing a fantasy of a life that only consists of happiness and only consists of winning trades but no losses. But in doing so, you're trying to chase that, chase the fantasy. It gets stuck in a constant revolution back and forth. because the more that you try to swing to the right and chase all the positives without the negatives, is the degree to which you will then snap back and swing to the left into those perceived negatives. And this is literally helping people becoming bipolar, chasing one pole, one side. So let's talk about the polarity of skepticism and naivety in trading for a minute. So bringing up your stuff into the market. Now it's a bit trading a balanced, realistic, and empowering. You will naturally have the greatest probability of success. Now, in the previous lesson, we just looked into that and how much money you can actually make in trading, especially with access to prop firms or potentially investable capital. Now, some of you would have watched that and you may be a little bit intoxicated by it. You've done the maths, compound interest calculator, and you can see how much money you can potentially be making in a relatively short period of time, and that can be extremely exciting and motivating. Now, others of you might could react completely differently and be very skeptical of it, and you might question the viability of it and the probability of being able to make that kind of money. So if your beliefs kind of sway more towards naivety and fantasy on the right, thinking, actually, Forex is amazing. I'm going to get funding in just 1 month, quit my job and start consistently making six figures every single month. And it's easy. Sort of a random guy on Instagram, he has a Rolex, perfectly straight. Must be true. Got to have a Lambo by Christmas. We all heard these people before, and complete flip side to that is these beliefs sway into all the way to skepticism, resentment to the left. Forex is an absolute scam. When they take losing trades, it's impossible to win. Is this way that anyone can make money on this? It's way too hard. So it's all a lie. I hate it. It's all bullshit. So as you believe sway between these two poles, and naturally you lower your probability of success. So the more balanced, realistic, and empowering you can keep your beliefs, the higher probability of success you will have. So how do you keep our beliefs as balanced and realistic as possible, but still being empowered and motivated? Or wisdom is the instantaneous recognition of both sides to an event. Wisdom is the instantaneous recognition of both sides to an event. And it's the individual who can see both the advantages, positives, but also see the drawbacks and the risks and the challenges at the same time, simultaneously. So that is the person who is extremely aware and who's best prepared and has the highest chance of achieving success. Because people go forward with things they want to achieve in life. Not a lot of traders, they maybe go off and get funding or they want to get funded, and they're focusing on the funding, and they only see the advantage on the funding, but they're extremely naive about the naivety, the realities of the funding, making some fantasy around the funding and what that actually can do for their life. Now, the only saying that focusing only on the positives, they're unaware of the real risks, of the real challenges, drawbacks, and disadvantages that actually are to trading funded capital. So when someone maybe accomplished that funding, they're pursuing that fantasy, and when they get that funding, they can only end up sometimes feeling a bit betrayed because they realize that actually there are drawbacks and risks here that maybe I wasn't initially, buying into because I was naive about it, only perceiving the positives. So as a result, they can sometimes losing the funding, sometimes self-sabotaging, and end up feeling betrayed by that particularly funded account. Most master traders, they're not overrun by fear and greed, fear and pain, naivety, because they evolve towards the light, towards the soul. They are objective and they seek the truth. They seek actuality. So I want you, each and every one of you, to enter that 10% of traders to see the light and become a master trader. That is my mission, to help you reach and maintain that level. That's the journey we're going to go on throughout this program, and that's what part of what it means to be embody, the power of our mind that seeks actuality, is the higher objective mind. And as a trader, you must always strive to achieve objectivity. So in other words, you must seek to see the entire picture, including the entire array of potential less complete realities. So engaging your higher objective mind in seeing the whole picture from what actually is, seeing the benefits and the drawbacks of every situation, that does is that allows you to pull yourself out of the artificial certainty or maybe fear, so that it allows you to actually act methodically with a clear mind. This is how you give yourself the highest chance of success from the very start. So, $1 million question is, How do we actually transcend to these two poles so we can develop and maintain our neutral perspective and keep our decision making as objective as possible? How do we separate ourselves from the losing masses and become masses traders? Well, there is an extremely simple and practical task that I was about to do in the middle minute. In order to achieve that, in order to transcend to those two poles, just before we do that, we're going to quick look at that slightly different diagram and another way of illustrating the human mind. So if we draw this line down the middle, we have negatively charges or perceptions at the bottom, and we have the positive charges, positive perceptions towards the top. Then we draw a line to the left, to the right. This represents the concept of time. Way to the left is the past, and in this move through the present, in the middle, right, where those lines cross, that's the present. All the way to the right, we have the future. Now, the future and the past, they do not exist. They are only constructs of your human mind, because anything that is in the future, it can only exist in your imagination. And anything that is in the past, it's only something that is residual in your memory. The present is all we have. Past and future doesn't exist outside your mind because you can never really go to the future, because once you get there, it's not just a new present moment, but its own past, its own future. So you can only access the past by your memory, and you can only access the future via your imagination. So if we look at the bottom left quadrant of this diagram, this is where you can remember something from your past. So it's a memory from the past that you have assigned a negative charge to it. See, we experience something that we were younger and we get a really bad perception of that event. Let's say you get bullied in school or something, and you feel resentment about this past negative memory because you're holding on to the perceived negatives of that event happening in the past. You're completely blinded to the positives of that event actually happening. Now you haven't yet have the awareness that there were positives in potentially something like, you know what, that bully hardened me up. That he helped me stand up for myself, not push around from my adult life, and actually led me to have a successful career and much better social life. But you're still feeling resentment about that bully that maybe has in school, and you're still holding on to that negative memory. You're still going to be holding on to that resentment. Then look at the top left quadrant. It's calling it memory of the past. This kind is contained infatuation. Instead, if you have assigned a positive charge to it. So let's say you experienced something in the past that you have a real positive perception of. I feel infatuation about this past positive memory because you're holding on to only to the perceived positives and benefits that event in the past. You're completely blinded to, or maybe just completely forgotten the negatives and the drawbacks of that event or that person in the memory. And this is often when you have people talk about, oh, back then it was a glory days, things are so much better back in my day, blah, 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 blah. Because they are only focusing on the positives that they choose to remember. And they are infatuated about that time in the past because they've forgotten all about the negatives and the drawbacks they were actually experiencing back then. Just forgotten that. So, maybe thinking that so great back in that day, but actually didn't have high-speed internet, didn't have smartphones, cheaper international flights or whatever. Actually, life wasn't that great back then compared to now. So that line in the middle of this diagram, that line is drawn vertically between the memory of the past and the imagination of the future. That line there, it's actually a mirror. That mirror reflects forward your memories of the past, reflects them into the future. So negatively charged memories of your past and the bottom left, these are mirrored forward to create negatively charged future imagination. So if you have resentment in the past about something, that is a mirror forward into the future in your imagination has fear. That past negative memories might affect yourself in your imagination has a future fear. So past resentments lead to future fears. So any charges from your past that will be mirrored into your future, and it will cause you to seek, avoid, and compensate rather than actually with certainty, presence, and power. For example, let's say you are violently bullied in school in your first lunch break, and you will then have a resentment charge in your memory of literally what just happened. Then you may have a strong fear that it can happen again. And in a second lunch break, they're going to give you an immediate future fear in your imagination. Now, if you violently bully, say, 10 or 15 years ago, you might have a fear that it can happen again sometime in the next 10 or 15 years, now you have built up a general fear, and that's holding your imagination. Since time and maturity can naturally reveal the benefits to these kinds of negative resented charges, those charges may gradually dissipate throughout your life. And as your past resentment resolves and disappears, you realize the hidden positives about that event. So does your future fear starts to slowly disappear. So that's literally how you can eliminate any fears that you have in your real life. That past resentment in your memory is causing a future fear in your imagination. You now seek both the equal negatives and positives. So you have neutralized the charges on that event, and the fear and resentment completely disappears. But in your negative perception of the bullying persists and you never break the resentment, your fear can sustain throughout your entire life. So if you are fearful about something and you just spend the time asking yourself, what in the past am I resentful of that is causing this future fear? And once you locate what that past resentment is, then you can list all the benefits of that event occurring in the past. And then when you list as many positives as negatives, you'll then dissolve your fear. It will no longer exist because you now have a complete awareness of it. So what is literally happened here in terms of physics is that you synthesize the negative and positive charges together to create a photon, to create a particle light, and that you finally see the light and you're now what people call enlightened because you're more wise. So neutralizing fantasies and fears, it pulls you back into the presence, pulls you out of living in your imagination and put you back into the present. So maybe people just constantly worried or fearful of things happening to them in the future, and maybe they're just even partner in the past. They're rolling for resentment to that. So their current partner, they're worried and fearful. Girlfriend or boyfriend might cheat on them, but they just aren't aware of all the positives to that actually happening. If they were cheating them, there's just partner cheats on you, you can get the dump them and fuck someone else. So it's like 10 actually steps you can actually take to lower the probability of that thing happening. And then list 10 benefits of that thing happening that you're fearful of, and then go further, then list 10 drawbacks of that thing not happening of that you're fearful of. Let's say maybe you're worried about losing your job, right? But if you hate your job, then you get to leave, get to do something else. That's a great benefit. What's the drawback of not losing a job? Well, then you have to stay there and do something that you hate, right? So you can see how this process will help you to dissolve that fear of worry. So then up on the top of this diagram, the positively charged past memories, infatuation with, these are also mirrored forward into your future, into your imagination of the future as fantasies. So your past infatuations lead to future fantasies. So those future events in your imagination in which you can only see the positives and you are all unaware and blinded to the negatives, risk and the drawbacks that can occur. So fantasy that is very common and relevant is prop funding to trade. Majority of traders fantasize about acquiring funding and trading in much larger account sizes than maybe what they currently have. Of course, there are really obvious benefits, right, of acquiring investing capital in prop firm trade with. One clearly is the bigger your account size is, more money you can actually potentially make, right? Many traders, they only think about such positive of these that acquiring that funding is going to solve all their problems. That we're soonly going to be making bucket loads of money and life will finally be easy and smooth. No more worries, right? But if you're fantasizing about getting funded and you're unconscious of the negatives, of the drawbacks of trading prop or investment capital, then you will lower the probability and all the speed of you actually successfully acquiring that funding. Or you may even lower the probability of you actually being holding on to it and staying funded once you have it. Because if you getting funded, if you put it up in this big pedestal and constantly looking up to it, this big massive event that you just need to make it happen as this big positive event, it's no drawbacks, you're just fantasizing about, then might not feel worthy until you're funded, and you might think that being funded or not is the difference between you being a successful trader or not, becomes a part of yourself. And when you inevitably experience losing trades in the market, which is completely unavoidable, by the way, losing trading are just the cost of doing business, you're going to see every single loss has a direct threat to your plans, of achieving your fantasy. So then you'll take every single loss personally, and your trading starts becoming very hard for you. And you'll be fighting an awful battle in this constant struggle because you're constantly self-sabotaging yourself. And this is part of the reason why so many people, they actually get funded, but then end up just losing their account in a few months. And remember, wisdom is the instantaneous recognition of both sides to an event. And quicker you can realize and fight the negatives within your future and past positive charges, and the positives within your future and past negative charges, then the quicker you do this, the wiser you become, and the more mastery you will be able to master your life. I appreciate it's a bit tongue twister, sometimes a bit confusing getting your head around into all these words, but in a simple way, if you only see the negatives of something, or you can find the negatives are only seeing the positive side of something, then your beliefs will become a lot more balanced, realistic, and empowering. You are rapidly increasing the probability of successfully achieving your goals. So when you do this, and when you find the negatives and drawbacks or future positive charges to your fantasy of acquiring prop firm capital, and the positives and benefits to your future negative charges, so the positives to your fears, maybe you have fears of not getting funded, or maybe you have fears of losing your funding when you already have it. When you do this, you annihilate both of those positives and negative charges and you see the light. So, at that moment, you dissolve your mirrored fears and fantasies of the future. So, I appreciate that, all that, it's especially if it's the first time you have heard these concepts and philosophies. What I can seem pretty esoteric and a little bit wishy-washy, or a fairy tale to you, whatever you want to call it to that. So I'll tell you what, let's actually get a bit more practical and perform a simple but very effective exercise to dissolve any fantasies that you may have about acquiring funded capital, or whatever it is that is your main goal is. Apply the same concept, right? So if you maybe have, let's say, a bit of a fantasy about something like we're being a bit naive because we're being blinded to the negatives and drawbacks and the risks and the challenges to it. So what we need to do is like listing as many of those negatives of achieving those goals, right? So what are the drawbacks? Now, depending on the magnitude of your fantasy, depending on the degree on how you've been thinking about it, how many positives you can see, that will then determine the number of the magnitude of the negatives that you will need to find and consciously become aware of in order to then neutralize that fantasy, to make it a balanced and empowering belief. So let's list some drawbacks when inquiring investor or prop firm capital trader. So pause the video now and list the amount for yourself, and hopefully you already have the notes for the video, but give it a go. So in no particular order, here's just a few drawbacks to external funding. Profit splits, all right. When there's prop firm or investors, there's going to need to compensate them for risking their capital with you. So you'll have to pay them a proportion of a profit that you make back to them. So obviously compared to trading your own capital, right, your own personal account, where you get to keep 100% of any profit that you make, that's a pretty clear drawback to, getting funded, right? So what else? Risk limits. So there's always be extra strict limits regarding your risk, such as daily drawdown limits, how much you can actually lose in a day, drawdown, how much you can actually lose in the account before the account is taken away from you, and many different variations of that. But essentially of that, you don't have all these restrictions on your own account where you don't have to worry about someone taking away from you if you cross those limits. Time limits. So a lot of prop firms impose time periods where you need to achieve certain trading requirements, and a lot of pressure on you hit those metrics within the time, and that can really lead you to taking suboptimal trade decisions. Profit targets. So similarly, you need to achieve certain amounts of profit in order to initially acquire the funding or receive the payout or get your account scaled up, or combine this with time limit too. So consistency rules, some firms want to see that you're always using the pretty much same lot size, same stop loss size, etc. So you can trading behavior to them is very uniform. This can also lead to extremely restricted when you compare it to the reality of how you actually want to trade and how your strategy might be designed. So also leverage restrictions. funding firms may not give you access to large enough leverage, so allow you to execute multiple positions at a time, and it can have a particularly restricting effect on tradings who maybe use tight stop losses, like me, 2 pips, or light amounts of risk. That can happen is can mean that you cannot execute a lot of high probability setups when you have to watch them go without you and you miss out on all that potential profit, which you could have kept side on if you had your own capital with the necessary amount of leverage that you require. News restrictions. So most firms don't let you trade your news, and even order in your account is triggered around that news window, then you can instantly lose your funding and it's taken away from you. And you get instantly lost a huge source of income in the blink of an eye. Bang. Not even get to trade through the news can also mean that you cannot hold trades long term, which also can serious consequences if you're more of a swing trader, right? So if you want to hold on the trades for longer periods of time. Time payouts. So most of the time you can just withdraw your money whenever you want. We need to wait for 2 weeks or a month, maybe longer. And then of course, you have to wait for their admin team to process your request. And then you have to wait for their broker to process the request. So you're at the mercy of them for when you can actually get your hands and actually access to your capital if you need to do so. Restricted asset classes and instruments. So most likely be able to be restricted what you can trade, only certain pairs or certain sets as restricted broker choice. So you normally force you to trade with a particular broker, and broker might not have trading conditions that are conducive to your strategy. Trading may have wider spreads or maybe higher commissions compared to other brokers, which of course, if you're trading your own capital, right, you have the freedoms to choose whatever broker is best suited for you. Firm bankruptcy. So you can't just let a mercy of that firm. So it can go under at any time for any reason. And you're seeing this a lot, right? Recently, these prop firms that are popping up, they're disappearing pretty quickly. So, and then what happens? You lost your source of income. They take away the account and refuse to pay a profit split, right? And that some firms have scrupulous activities where you need to be aware of these possible risks. So next, the rules and the terms and conditions changing. So, right, so firms can change this in the future and suddenly may not meet conducive to your strategy, and you may not be able to trade successfully. Fees, you obviously need to pay a fee in order to attempt to acquire funding, or some sort of firms actually charge ongoing monthly fees just to have ongoing access to the capital or software, or which of course you're not going to need to pay that, and just with your own funds. Tax, a lot of the times you'll be EDView has a contract to these firms and you're trading prop firm capital, and this might not be the most ideal tax efficient way to trade within the whatever country you reside. So obviously you have more options to open to you, most likely if you're just your own capital. And finally, your job security kind of translates into all these points, because essentially when you're relying on other people, this was never as secure as being 100% independent and so self-sufficient. So I'll leave that there. Of course, there's plenty more. This is a lot of interesting list. Hopefully you'll start to see that acquiring funding is not exactly the best. It's extremely powerful way to get access to initial capital, with other people might not have. But prop firms are a great service. I wish they were around 15 years ago. Back when I was first trading out, you guys have a really good opportunity, but don't put it up on this massive pedestal, and you can grow your own personal account with or without it. There are plenty other options that will be available to you. Now, in fact, if you don't want to acquire funding, I would always advise that you would withdraw any of your profits and you use that to build your own personal account as quickly as possible, so that you can become more and more self-efficient to reduce these risks of the firms that we just listed. Right, so we hope you understand that all of your life is coming to you at the speed of light, right? So within those light particles, there's positive and negative. All the things that you think are positive now, you have eventually come to realize that are negatives, and all the things that are negative now, you eventually realize that there are positives about it. And you really understand this in your core. Everything that happens to you comes at you in your life, and you perceive it as negatively at first. You'll be looking around. Oh, where's the positive? Oh, there it is. Hello. And the things are really positive. Everything. Oh God, where's the drawback here? And when you go back and you find the drawback, you really neutralize your fantasy and naivety, and it pulls you back into present, pull you back from your future imagination back into the present. Now, likewise, in the other situation, when you go and find the blessings and things, you neutralize fear and resentment. Again, puts you back into the present. At a point of presence, your mind is at an operating maximum, have the highest probability of thinking creatively and is tapping into your inspiration and tapping into your genius, because being present is when you can operate at peak performance. This is where you create mastery. It's called being poised. But the alternative is being poisoned by your emotions, the swinging back and forth between the polarities of perceived negatives and positives. Now, some people can sort of grasp and understand these concepts to a certain degree, but even if this sort of people can actually intellectualize that, they still give themselves in these situations. And yeah, no, I understand that. Everything is balanced, and yeah, I can look in the blessings and the drawbacks. I can neutralize myself, and I can get back into the presence and poise. But this happened to me. They did this, and that is, oh, that is a bad thing. My relationship, my partner, my boss, it all fucking happened. So in many people's minds, there are exceptions to these laws. And exceptions, by the way, are created from their polarized understanding. So these are perpetuated things like, oh, relationships, oh, they're all meant to be happy and peaceful and supported. Well, okay, if that's the case, show me one single fucking relationship in the history of humanity that was always been one-sided, always been positive, supported. I bet you can find a single one, because they're both. They're meant to be both. And to the degree that you truly understand this, you can have fun. To the degree that you don't, you're going to really shit time. Imagine a coin toss, right? 50-50. Imagine flipping that coin 1,000 times, 10,000 times. And you had this ridiculous belief that it's meant to land on heads every time. So that when it lands on head, fuck yeah, it's rendered all excited and elated, and you get euphoric, and you get dopamine, become a dope. Now, imagine now becoming in tails. Fuck, it just landed. Something is wrong. Something is wrong with the coin. Nothing is wrong with me. It's like the coin is get depressed. 50 fucking percent of the time, you're going to get depressed. Can you imagine the volatility in that relation? This is how people live their fucking relationships. It's called bipolar, because they are addicted to the one pole, to the one side. So that then get nailed every time that the other side shows up. You get the drugs, it's not going to fix it. You got bipolar and you're popping pills. The reason why you got bipolar is you guys get lack because of drugs, because of your phase, because your understanding of the universe is fucking misaligned and it's frustrated. Everything is fucked up. Government is fucked. My wife is fucked. My wife's a bitch. My friends and all the things. But the world is a shit show. And you gotta have one hell of a shitty life with that kind of belief. Imagine the quality of life that you can have if it didn't matter what side of the coin is shown to you. Heads or tails, positive, negative, good or bad, happy or sad, peace or raw, corporated and competition. No matter what side shows up, fuck yeah, I'm gonna have it, bring it on. All right. So when you have that fantasy, and you have this fantasy of what achieving whatever that big specific goal it is, what you have, and what it'll mean for you in your head when you achieve it, in your imagination of the future, if you can neutralize and dissolve that fantasy by listing out just as many drawbacks as challenges and risks to achieving that goal, then your beliefs will become more realistic, and instead of barring, increase the probability of successfully achieving it, because you're actually with a poised and balanced mind, your mind poised with emotions. Now, I'm not here to sell you a dream. I can do that, try to sell more, but my course is free. So I can sit here and say, you still go for funding, blah, 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 blah. Because maybe I can actually put some websites saying that X amount of students got funded, which is cool, right? It's really cool. It really is. It's called as something significant. But my big goal is to make independent and consistent, profitable traders. So I want to help you get funded. Of course, only that's what you want and you think you need, but more than that, just to get you funded. What I care about is actually being able to keep and maintain that funding. I want you to achieve and maintain profitable consistency. And that's what I care about. Because then that is sustainable, and you are then self sufficient, because you'll have that skill that no one can take away from you. And then you become the asset. And that's why you're already working on your mindset from the very gig. Right? So, just to finish the lesson, a bit more kind of a general point about your goals or rules, not just specifically funding. That is that achieving your goals and you set out your costs, there are going to be drawbacks in order for you to achieve those, right? So if determined enough and willing to pay the price which is attached to your goals, you can achieve anything that you want. Now, obviously, you're right. This is within the laws of physics. I would hope that that goes without saying. You never really know these days. Don't need to start thinking that you can try to find something. You know what? Fuck it. This is going to try to do. Who am I to stop you, right? Yeah. Going back to this for a second, what does paying the price actually means? Paying the price is often consists of lack of time to socialize. You're going to quickly realize that you want to success in this business. You're probably not going to be able to go out and getting drunk every weekend or spending all your spare time partying. That is not how you're going to get ahead. You don't have to become a monk or a nun to get a successful trader, but you don't need to see your friend every single weekend, right? It's all about finding that balance. You might even cash strapped for long periods of time because when you first starting out, you're taking down in the trenches and you start to learn, master your craft. Going to be a period where you're not making any money while you earn your stripes, you earn your badges, and this is all part of the game that you want to achieve the higher reward later in life. You also be paralyzed that growing apart from your friends, maybe on a different journey as you now share the same values as you. So bear in mind that you're the average of your five closest friends. Unless find that you'll get less time for family that maybe you would like. So you're going to have to sacrifice this a little bit. But find that balance and remembering that achieving successful with trading will likely give you that freedom to spend a lot of time with them in a not so distant future than potentially you can right now. Also, going to be probably getting harder and harder to find others of a similar mindset to actually go out and date if that's the case for you. Some people are just not going to understand or accept that you're pursuing your goals, but also the work and the dedication, the sacrifice that it actually requires. So you will feel misunderstood a lot of the times, and you can experience a degree of loneliness during your journey. Trading is a very lonely pursuit, and most people don't get it. Some people just see the risk thinking it's gambling. Some people honestly have no fucking idea what really trading is about. So a lot of the times that I meet people, I never actually ask that I'm a trader. I usually ask like, okay, I work in finance and web development, IT engineering. Make up a bit more interesting line and that's shipped on something for a living or something ridiculous like that, just to avoid the inevitable conversation that often leads to telling them that's trade. Well, this is why I build this community and get like-minded individuals like you all together in one place. So girls can network together here and share your goals, can build each other up, can try to make that journey as smooth, as efficient as possible, and enjoyable as possible too. Because in the end of the day, what the hell is the point of trying to do all this shit if you're not having fun along the way? I'm sure you all heard about focus on the process. Process is the prize. Focus. This is so true, right? If you don't enjoy the actual journey and the pursuit of your goals, then you're wasting your life. In my opinion, you're wasting your time. So try to learn to enjoy the perpetual highs and lows that you will inevitably experience because you guys are enlightened now, right? You understand that the highs that you're experiencing are just negatives that haven't quite perceived yet. So on the flip side, if you're really having a shitty fighting day, you're experiencing those lows, guess what? You just haven't had the time or the wisdom yet to see the actual benefits to the lows that you may be experiencing. And I promise you, you'll get quicker and quicker and quicker at doing that. And in your swing of the pendulum becomes smaller and smaller. And this is when you'll find everything emotionally just a hell of a lot easier. Life becomes a smooth, fun, flexible game. So I guess this is to be aware of the price that are attached to your goals. And by having the discipline to achieve your goals, choosing between what you want now and what you want the most. So although there are prices attached to your goals, remember there are also benefits to all of those perceived drawbacks. The main one being, of course, right, that these drawbacks will help you achieve your goals. But also, for example, let's say current apart and sharing something with your friends, is that really such a bad thing? They're not spending as much time with people that you're really going anywhere in life, just holding you back. They're going to be networking with and treading pretty into your life, and you're playing into a much higher level, and people who are actually push you to do better and improve, trying to pull you up to their level. In instead of pulling you down and holding you back. So you can see how you can constantly doing this process now to look for positives where you can see them before, and look for negatives in your positive fantasies that you may be consciously blinded from before. So empowering beliefs, most empowering beliefs, the possibility, the most successful you will be